I always thought the first moment you hold your child would be the most beautiful memory of your life. But for me, it came with the sting of betrayal. The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly, mixing with the steady beeping of hospital monitors. My body still trembled from the pain, from the hours of labor, from bringing my daughter into the world. I should have been crying happy tears. I should have been holding her tiny fingers and whispering promises of love and protection. But instead, I heard my husband, David, say the words that felt sharper than any scalpel in that room. "I want a DNA test." He said it flat, cold, like he was ordering black coffee, not asking about his own daughter. The nurse holding my baby froze. Dr. Collins looked up from the chart, his usually calm eyes clouded with concern. And me? I just stared. I couldn't feel my legs, but that wasn't from giving birth. It was from heartbreak. "David, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely recognizable, like it belonged to someone else. He didn't look at me. He looked at our daughter, my daughter, with suspicion. His eyes scanned her as if she were a puzzle he hadn't agreed to build. "You heard me, Helen," he said. "I want proof she's mine." There was a time when David would have held my hand through a storm, when he'd run to get ice cream at midnight just because the baby was kicking and I was craving chocolate. But now, he was just someone else. A man in a sharp suit, with a lawyer on speed dial and a heart I no longer recognized. 12 years of marriage, and this was where we landed. I laughed. Not because it was funny. It was the kind of laugh that tastes bitter, the kind that hurts your ribs. Then I said the words I never imagined I'd say to the man I once trusted more than anyone else in the world. "Get out!" He flinched, just a little, but not enough. Dr. Collins started to speak. "Mrs. Harrison," but David cut him off, pulling out his phone. "I have every right to be here. My lawyer says—" "Your lawyer?" I almost screamed. "You were talking to a lawyer while I was in labor?" Thor. Nurse moved to stand between us, bless her heart. But I stopped her. "No. Let him stay. Let him watch. Let him see just how wrong he is." And in that moment, something inside me clicked. Maybe it was the mother in me. Maybe it was the daughter of Edward Harrison, the man who built an empire with honesty and grit. Or maybe it was just a woman pushed too far. But whatever it was, I knew one thing for sure. David thought he could shake me. He thought this would scare me, shame me, break me, but he underestimated the strength of a mother who knows her truth. He underestimated me. Michael's apartment smelled like comfort. Old coffee grounds, leather furniture, and cinnamon tea. The kind of smell that reminds you you're not alone. After 3 days in the hospital, surrounded by sterile walls and even colder emotions, this place felt like a safe harbor. Lisa, his wife, was in the kitchen brewing something warm while I curled up on their worn couch, Emma resting on my chest, her tiny breath rising and falling against mine. I was still shaking, not from childbirth anymore, but from everything that had unraveled after. Michael paced the room, notebook in hand. He was always scribbling, thinking, connecting dots no one else saw, part of what made him such a good journalist. But right now, he wasn't chasing a story. He was protecting his cousin. "When exactly did David start acting different?" he asked, tapping his pen thoughtfully. I closed my eyes, trying to rewind time. "Maybe 4 months ago? He started coming home late, missing doctor's appointments, said it was some big merger, Preston Tech." Lisa, placing a mug of chamomile tea on the table, froze. "That deal fell through, months ago." I blinked at her. "How do you know?" "My sister works in PR for Preston. They pulled out in March." March. My heart sank. That was the same month David started bringing home new suits, the ones I never saw receipts for. The same time he stopped reaching for me in bed, stopped laughing, Stop talking about baby names. Michael stopped pacing. This is what's not adding up? Why wait until the baby is born to ask for a DNA test? Why not do it during pregnancy? Lisa sat beside me, lowering her voice. Because he needed witnesses. He needed drama. A scene. It hit me like a slap. He wasn't asking for clarity. He was building a case. My arms tightened around Emma. Her little face, so innocent, so trusting, reminded me of how easily I had trusted him, how much of myself I had given. Michael cleared his throat, then said carefully, "There's more. I made a few calls." He looked at me like someone about to drop a bomb. "David's been meeting with divorce attorneys since January." The room spun for a moment. January. That was when I told him I was pregnant. When he hugged me, smiled like a boy, and said, "It's perfect." The betrayal stung deeper than I thought possible. Lisa sat upright. But why stay through the pregnancy if he was planning to leave? We all fell quiet. And then Lisa whispered, "Because of the trust." I looked at her, trying to follow. "The Harrison family trust," she continued. "Didn't your father-in-law's will have conditions? About heirs?" "Yes," I said slowly. "The trust only pays out if there's a legitimate biological child." Now it made sense, all of it. The cold looks, the legal talk, the sudden interest in paternity. He wasn't worried Emma wasn't his. He was hoping she wasn't, so he could take everything, money, control, the company, and leave me with nothing. Michael's phone buzzed. His face darkened as he read. "David just posted on LinkedIn," he muttered. "He's accepted a new position, CFO at Grant Technologies." I sat up, confused. "Wait, Grant? Isn't that the company that tried to buy out my father-in-law last year?" Michael nodded. "The same one Edward refused to sell to before he died. We didn't even have time to breathe before someone knocked on the door." Lisa peeked through the peephole, then turned pale. "It's him, David, and lawyers." I held Emma tighter. "Don't open it," I whispered. But Michael looked at me. "Want to let him talk?" I nodded slowly. "Let's hear what the snake has to say." David's voice came through the door like a cold draft. "Helen, I know you're in there. The DNA test is scheduled for tomorrow morning. My lawyer insists you be present." Michael stepped toward the door, but I touched his arm. "Wait," I whispered. "Let him speak." Outside, David's voice softened, just enough to sound rehearsed. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "Just come home. We can work this out." I stood slowly, Emma cradled against my shoulder. "Work what out, David?" I asked loudly through the door. "The lies? The secret meetings? Or maybe the part where you're trying to steal from your own daughter?" There was silence for a second too long. "I don't know what you think you know," he finally said. "I know enough," I answered. "About Grant Technologies, about the lawyers, and I'll know even more soon." The pause was telling. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he said, dropping the tender tone like a mask. "Neither do you," I replied. He left with hurried footsteps down the hallway. "Game on," Michael muttered, locking the door behind him. I pulled out my phone and found the contact I hadn't used in years. "Dr. Collins," he answered after 2 rings. His voice carried the same warmth I remembered, but also a tinge of worry. "Helen, what do you need?" "Everything," I said. "We're going to need every step of that test documented, witnessed, and legally airtight." He didn't hesitate. "Understood." The next day, David arrived at the hospital like a businessman closing a deal. He wore a charcoal suit, a new tie I'd never seen before. With him were 2 lawyers in suits worth more than my car. Dr. Collins greeted them at the door, his arms folded calmly. "This is a private facility," he began. David stepped forward. "My client has the right to supervise the test. We have concerns about tampering." I let out a bitter laugh. "Tampering?" I repeated. You mean like breaking into labs to rig test results? David's jaw tightened. Careful, Helen. You're already skating on thin ice. I raised my phone, showing a screen full of damning text messages. And what if these get sent to the board? Messages between you and Charlotte Grant. Planning to invalidate your daughter's trust fund? He froze. You had access to our shared cloud, David, I cut in. You forgot to log out when you were too busy planning a corporate coup. One of his lawyers leaned in and whispered urgently. David's face darkened, but his voice stayed calm. It changes nothing. The test proceeds. Dr. Collins stepped in. Under my supervision, with witnesses, unless you'd prefer I inform the board that their CFO is working with Grant Technologies to undermine the company. Michael stepped forward, holding his phone casually. My article on corporate espionage drops in an hour, he said. You'll be front-page news. David blinked, his forehead now glistening with sweat. You're bluffing. Michael smiled. Your tie's crooked. David turned, fists clenched, and stormed off to the waiting area. But I didn't follow. I stood still, holding Emma close. This wasn't just about DNA anymore. It was about legacy. It was about truth, and it was about making sure David couldn't rewrite either. The Grant Technologies building looked like it had something to prove, all steel and glass towering like it owned the sky. I shifted Emma's carrier on my hip and caught my reflection in the glossy marble wall. My navy blue suit still fit barely, but it held more weight than fabric. David had bought it for board meetings back when he said I was the best investment Harrison Industries ever made. Funny how things change. The receptionist barely looked up. Miss Grant is in a meeting. I didn't wait. Tell her Helen Harrison is here. The receptionist's fingers froze mid-keystroke. Her eyes flicked down to Emma, her dark curls unmistakably similar to David's. The silence stretched. Have a seat, she said quickly. She'll be right with you. 5 minutes later, I was ushered into a corner office that smelled of imported leather and quiet ambition. Charlotte Grant sat behind a wide glass desk, posture perfect, not a strand of hair out of place. Her white blouse was crisp, her lipstick bold. She looked younger than I expected, and more unsure. Her fingers twisted a silver pen, her knuckles going pale. I don't understand, she said coolly. Emma stirred in her carrier. I tucked the blanket around her and looked up. David never mentioned a wife? I asked. A baby? Her eyes darted to the ring on her finger. A 3-carat princess. Cut. Identical to the one David had bookmarked on his old laptop. She shook her head, lips twitching. You can't prove anything. I slid my phone across the glass. Actually, I can. Screenshots, emails, messages between David and her discussing removing obstacles and ensuring the trust won't activate. Messages about manipulating Edward Harrison's legacy. Charlotte scrolled through them, slowly. The red drained from her cheeks. David said you were out of the picture, she whispered. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Her voice cracked. The DNA test, he said it would clear things up. I leaned forward. Almost like he already knew the results, right? Almost like someone made sure of that. Her eyes snapped up, wide with realization. Pressed on. Your father, the CEO. What will he say when he sees this? That you were engaged to a married man, one who was plotting to steal a company your family tried to buy through legal channels just last year. Charlotte grabbed the desk's edge like it could anchor her. You're lying, she muttered. Check his second phone, I said calmly. The one he keeps in his gym locker. She froze. How do you... Because I was you once, I said. Young, in love, sure I was different, that I mattered more. Charlotte's composure cracked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You think he used me? I didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. Then I added, When you confront him, watch his left eyebrow. It twitches when he lies. She didn't say anything as I picked up Emma and turned toward the door. Oh, and Charlotte? I said over my shoulder. You can keep the ring. I've outgrown mine. Back at Michael's place, Tara, our tech-savvy ally, was already waiting. The lab confirmed it, she said. Someone tried to access the DNA test records. They've moved the files to a secure location. A new message pinged on my phone from an unknown number. Clever girl. My heart stilled. David, check your Harrison Industries email. You've got 1 hour to resign from the board, or I'll release everything, including what you signed. I stared at the screen. He wasn't bluffing. I'd signed documents he gave me. At night, pregnant, exhausted. Routine filings, he'd said. I trusted him. Now they were weapons aimed at me. But I wasn't that trusting woman anymore. I dialed Dr. Collins. How fast can you get me the original audit files? His voice was calm, like always. Already done. And Helen, your father-in-law, he left behind a contingency plan. For this exact scenario. I took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, I felt it. Clarity. David had played his best move. But he forgot one thing. I'm Edward Harrison's daughter-in-law, and he taught me the most important lesson of all. Legacy isn't inherited, it's protected. The conference room at Harrison Industries had never felt so cold. Or maybe it was just me. Half the board seats were empty. Resignations, scandals, or fear. Dr. Collins sat near the head of the table, his eyes flicking between me and the clock. Michael stood in the corner, his arms crossed tight. And Tara? She was somewhere in the building, fingers flying over a keyboard trying to recover what David had tried to bury. Marcus Grant's voice broke the silence. The evidence is conclusive, he said, spreading papers across the gleaming wood. The DNA test results were altered before they reached the lab. I didn't blink. David's new lawyer, slick and well-rehearsed, cleared his throat. Even so, Mrs. Harrison signed off on the financial transfers, the ones tied to the offshore accounts. I stared at the papers he slid across the table. My heart dropped. The account numbers, they were ours. The joint account, the one David told me not to worry about, the one I stopped watching when I trusted him most. This is absurd, Michael snapped, stepping forward. She was on maternity leave. You expect anyone to believe she was secretly moving company funds with a newborn in her arms? The lawyer smiled like a shark. Timestamps say otherwise. Dr. Collins shifted in his seat. There's more. Someone accessed Edwards' private archive last night. The contingency documents are missing. My stomach clenched. That's not possible. They were secured with your login, the lawyer interrupted smoothly, and sent from your email. My phone buzzed. A message from Tara lit up. The screen. Stocks tanking. Fraud story hit the media. Socials on fire with speculation. DNA test drama is trending. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, but the lawyer raised his hand. There's been a motion from the remaining board members, he said. A vote of no confidence. Effective immediately. You can't, I started. But then I heard the one voice I prayed I wouldn't. David. He entered the room like he owned it, despite the ankle monitor blinking at his ankle. He looked polished, confident, like none of it mattered. As if I trusted you not to turn everyone against me, he said, his voice smooth. But don't worry. The board needs stability now, and I'm the only one offering it, my hands balled into fists. You ruined this company, he smiled. I saved it. Then he looked at the room. I have a cooperation deal with the SEC. Full disclosure, lighter sentence. In exchange, I help clean house. I stared at him. All the fake signatures, the emails, the forged documents. He had set this up months ago, and now he was framing me as the scapegoat. Then came the dagger. Also, he said, pulling out a folded document, the initial DNA results showed something interesting. Helen, would you like me to explain genetic markers to the board? Dr. Collins stood. That's enough, David cut in. The test shows Emma might not be mine. That brings into question the validity of the trust inheritance. I couldn't breathe. He turned to the room. So, to protect the company, I'll be filing for full custody. That was it, the final move. Or so he thought. I stood slowly. My legs felt heavy, but my heart was steady. You want to talk truth, David? I asked. Let's show them. I pulled out the flash drive Tara recovered. This is Edward's real legacy. His voice, his plan, his confession. I plugged it in. The boardroom fell silent as Edward Harrison's voice filled the speakers. Calm, strong, unmistakable. I've made mistakes, he said. But I will not let Harrison Industries fall into the hands of greed. If anything happens to me, if my granddaughter's rights are challenged, this is the truth. He detailed David's fraud. The deals with Grant Technologies. The manipulated documents. And finally his last will, transferring all executive rights and Emma's trust control to me, Helen. The room stayed frozen as the message ended. David's lawyer tried to recover. That could have been faked, Dr. Collins interrupted. That's not all. He handed over original signed documents. Edward's seal, witnessed by 3 board members, 2 of whom were in the room. David's face twisted. You still have no proof that girl is mine. Then a new voice came from the hallway. Charlotte. Her makeup was smudged, her heels clicking like thunder. She's yours, David, she said, tossing his gym locker phone onto the table. You told me yourself, and you told 3 other women. 2! Gasps rippled through the room. David lunged toward the phone, but Michael stepped in. Don't, he said simply. David's mask finally cracked. You don't understand. This was never about the baby. It was about power, about what I built. No, I said, my voice low and firm. It was about what you stole. Police sirens wailed outside. The SEC agents entered the boardroom as David's shoulders sagged. You really think this is a win? He spat as they cuffed him. No, I replied. It's a beginning. The air felt different in Edward's old office. Quieter, like the walls were exhaling after holding their breath for too long. His leather chair still sat behind the mahogany desk, and in front of it, just like he always kept, was a jar of old-fashioned peppermints. He said they reminded him to stay grounded. No one's too big to enjoy something simple, he used to say. Dr. Collins handed me a leather folder, worn, aged, but full of weight. Edward wanted you to have this. When the time was right, he said gently. Inside were years' worth of business plans, handwritten notes, and 1 letter. I recognized the penmanship immediately. Decisive, slanted just a bit to the right, always in blue ink. My dearest Helen, if you're reading this, it means things have gone the way I feared. But I want you to know, this company, this legacy, was never about balance sheets. It was about people. You were never just my daughter-in-law. You were the only one I trusted to protect what mattered when the time came. Legacy isn't a name or a title. It's in the choices we make, especially the hard ones. Choose to build, choose to protect, and always choose love. My eyes blurred as I folded the letter, holding it close for just a moment longer. Emma stirred in her carrier, letting out one of those tiny, sleepy sighs that somehow holds more peace than silence itself. Outside, the hallway buzzed with voices, the board preparing to meet, the SEC finalizing their investigations. Evelyn Grant waiting quietly in the corridor, no longer a rival, just another woman who'd been lied to. Another life David had fractured. I didn't want any of this, she said when we passed. Neither did I replied, honest and simple. She glanced at Emma, her features softening. He told me he wanted children, she said quietly. He promised a future. I really believed him. I gave a sad smile. So did I. When I entered the boardroom, I didn't speak at first. I looked at the seats, some familiar, some new, and for a moment, I remembered how it felt to sit across from Edward, listening, learning. Now it was my turn to lead. We're not just reorganizing, I said clearly. We're rebuilding. Tara was already typing the press release behind. Me. Funding for the charitable foundation will double, starting with support for single parents, I continued. And every dollar spent from Emma's trust will require a matching investment in our community. A few surprised murmurs, but no arguments. That was the point, wasn't it? Not to destroy what David tried to build, but to make something better out of what he tried to break. When it was all over, I gathered my things. Michael walked beside me to the car, Emma snoozing in his arms. You know, he said, glancing at the crowd of reporters outside, you're about to become the face of one of the biggest corporate turnarounds of the decade. I chuckled. Let them write whatever they want. I'm just going home. He smiled. No, you're going forward. And he was right. There would be press, testimony, decisions to make. But those were for tomorrow. Tonight belonged to me and Emma. To quiet rooms, warm bottles, soft lullabies to peace. As I looked down at her sleeping face, I saw something I hadn't in weeks. Clarity. She was mine, not just by blood, but by bond. And no test, no courtroom, no boardroom could ever change that. Because in the end, some legacies aren't passed down. They're protected. And some victories, they come not from fighting back, but from choosing what's worth fighting for. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.